The presenting sponsor of the CANIE Climate Dialogues podcast is the University of Auckland's International Office, and we owe them a huge thank you for their support. The University of Auckland's International Office is proud to sponsor the CANIE Climate Dialogues podcast series, and we hope to continue to make them proud with this current season and upcoming episodes. As you can imagine, New Zealand is a unique place to think about climate through the lens of their Indigenous cultures. Leading the world's universities in the Times Higher Ed Global Impact Rankings for the first 2 years of the rankings, as we all work towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the international team at the University of Auckland share your concerns, including your concern about climate action and international education. The University of Auckland is answering the world's call. Welcome to the CANIE Climate Dialogues, the podcast at the intersection of international education and climate action. I am your host today, Kelly Davis, and today we'll be continuing with our Travel with CANIE series, featuring a guest who made the journey herself from the Netherlands. But before we jump into the conversation, some quick housekeeping. First, I'd like to give the friendly reminder to subscribe to our podcast feed wherever it is that you lend your ears to the CANIE Climate Dialogues. And if you're one of our friends who listens on Apple Podcasts, let us know how you like the show with a friendly rating. Second, be sure to register for CANIE's Climate Action Week, which begins on November 28th, 2022. The week features sessions on big ideas for the future, follow-up on the CANIE Accord, information about sustainable travel, regional meetings, and how you can get involved with us at CANIE. Sessions will occur twice to accommodate all time zones, so be sure to check out the agenda and register on canie.org. Now we'll get into the episode, featuring Mariëlle van Es from Leiden University in the Netherlands, who will share her experiences traveling by train with her colleagues from Rotterdam to Barcelona for the EAIE conference in September 2022. Hi, Mariëlle. Welcome to the CANIE Climate Dialogues podcast. It is great to have you here today. Would love to have us start by you just telling us a little bit about yourself, where you work, and what your role is.
Well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me. It's quite exciting and a bit nerve-wracking, but we'll get there. Well, like you said, I'm Mariëlle van Es. I'm the team leader at our scholarships team at Leiden University in the Netherlands. And I have a team of about 5 people, and we manage about any scholarship you can think of. Incoming students, outgoing students, degree, exchange, all kinds of things.
Scholarships, they're an important thing. But we're going to be talking about the climate piece of your work, or what you try to bring into it today. So we like to ask every guest to also give us a bit of a grounding, a bit of a background about their own climate story. So if you don't mind sharing yours.
No, I don't mind sharing mine. A couple of years, I used to travel a lot for work, not this job I have now, but the previous job I had. Around the world, and at a certain moment in time I really didn't like that anymore, various reasons, but the environment being, well, basically up there. So for private travel I already decided, okay, if I don't need to take a plane, or if I can travel sustainably, I want to do that. So in 2019 my family and I decided, so my husband and 2 children, we decided to go to Barcelona by train from the Netherlands as our summer holiday. And that was such an amazing trip. It was the best holiday we had. It was so relaxing. So I talked about it to everyone, and everyone was inspired. And a lot of people I know were also looking into, then I might take a train next time. And that's slowly seeping into the job I have now. Of course, that we had COVID, so there wasn't a lot of traveling involved, which was a good thing in a way. But of
had
course,
its benefits for sure.
Yeah, but of course, with scholarships, the problem I have with internationalization is that there's a lot of travel involved. But I also want students to have the experiences I had, so I don't want to stop them from traveling, but make them more aware of, if they can travel in a sustainable way, to do it. And I always take my own stories with me to convince them to do something like that.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the ultimate goals, is to be able to actively practice what we preach and be able to share our experiences and what our learnings from those experiences. And it's so interesting. It's right in line kind of what you were thinking about in terms of the climate had to do with travel, which is what we're talking about today. And we're talking about how you actually traveled for the EAIE conference in Barcelona in September. It's a tricky couple of vowels to have next to each other.
And especially because usually in your own language you pronounce it a bit differently. So I always stumble if I say it in English. So.
Yeah, definitely. So, but you did this train ride again so it's really interesting to hear that you did it with your family first.
That is also what triggered me to also do it for work. I already said I don't want to go to conferences in Europe anymore by plane. So if I can't go there by train, I'd rather not go at all. Or
you'd already set that kind of
precedent. I already set that. Yeah.
Wow.
So and then I was asked to go to Barcelona. So I repeated this. I said, well, I would love to go, but only if I can take a train. If I need to go by plane, I'd rather not go. Or I'm not going. I even made a strong point like that. And my boss was actually quite enthusiastic about the plan. So that was good. And he also considered going by train. Unfortunately, he also had to visit some other places in Spain, which made it virtually impossible to do so. But because I already did it with my own family, I knew it was not difficult. It was relaxing. I think that helped a lot. Maybe if I hadn't done that, I don't know if I would have been so convincing to others to also take a train.
Yeah, so to have that previous experience certainly helped. And this time what we're talking about is that you went again and you brought a decent number of people with you. Not everyone who was attending the conference from your university, but a really good portion. So
yes, definitely.
But I want to backtrack first, and I want to first ask you, how did you hear about the Travel with CANIE initiative?
That's actually quite a funny story. And an ex-colleague of mine knew I was interested in traveling green and the environment in general. And she was contacted by Margherita Pasquini, and she said, "Oh, you two have to get together. And you will probably get along just fine, and you have the same passions." And so my ex-colleague brought me into contact with Margherita, and we started talking, and then she said, "Do you know about CANIE?" And I didn't know yet. So that's how the ball got rolling, actually. And there was I already decided to go by train before I heard about this initiative. So I was super surprised in a good way.
It was right in line. You needed no more convincing.
I was like, oh yes, the universe aligns finally.
Well, did it help at all with let's start with, how many people from your institution ended up attending EAIE?
I think there were actually 18 people traveling to Barcelona. There was also one person who decided to attend online. So that was even more green. But,
zero emissions.
It also had some downside, she said. So, but of those 18 people, 8 of us were traveling by train. So almost half, which is for first time, I think it's quite good.
I would say so.
I was actually quite surprised of how little convincing it took. I just presented this we have a meeting every month of all the international relations people, so the exchange officers from the different faculties. And so when we had this meeting and people were signing up for the EAIE, I actually told them, like, well, I'm planning on going by train. I will make a spreadsheet. If you're also interested in going by train, please let me know, and I can see if I can book something for us together. So in a way that made it easier for them, of course, that I would book for them, because and then there were actually quite a lot of people who said they wanted to come along. So
did they also know about the Travel with CANIE initiative? Did that have help with any of the convincing to know that there were other people, or was it your experience?
Yeah, I told them, well, this was the first bit, and then I also told them, well, there's actually an initiative going on, and this is it. And I sent them the link, and I asked them to also fill out the carbon emission calculator to see the difference, because I feel that really helps if people see the graphs. Okay, if you travel by plane, it takes this much. you have this much emissions, and if you go by train, it's only this much.
Really see the impact there that they can.
So they didn't know about it yet, but I made sure they had the details. Yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean, what I find really interesting about this is that you said that you told me previous to our conversation that the train tickets were actually more expensive than the flights. But so what, I mean, when your supervisor, they were fine with you taking the train, when it came to be a larger number of people, was there any further convincing? Did price play any factor here?
Not everyone is paid by the same person, so it's quite
they might be part of different faculties.
Different
or
faculties.
Sure.
And so they had to convince their own parties to about the price. What I said is, well, we have this program Erasmus Plus in Europe, and they have a component, a travel green component. So they're trying to green up exchanges. And I told them, if we want to convince our students to travel in a more sustainable way, but we're still taking a plane to places where we can easily take a train, that doesn't make any sense. And I think that is also what really helped in convincing, like, yeah, you have a point there, that's kind of weird. We're asking our students to make this sacrifice, and half of the time it's, well, the travel green grant is only 50 euros at the moment. That's not going to cover the difference between plane and train. So we're really asking students to make a sacrifice financially, which is percentage-wise a much bigger sacrifice than our buses have to take, I think. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm glad that it didn't take a lot of convincing on my side. I know that his supervisors said, well, it's actually quite a lot of money. And the funny story about that is that eventually they were also going to the EAIE, but by plane, and their flight got cancelled. They didn't want to take that flight, so they had to rebook another flight. So I think eventually that was even more expensive. But yeah, it would have been half by plane. So it's a big difference, and I think that's a big problem. And it's not because trains are that expensive. I think planes are way too cheap.
And there's reasons for that, which we're not going to get into in this episode. No. But it's definitely an issue. And I think that's, I mean, it's good that the point that kind of drove it home was that, you're telling students to travel sustainably. The Erasmus Plus program is trying to add that component. And it's important for professionals to try to lead by example and kind of practice what we preach.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, especially, of course, I understand that. And I also tell students that if you're going somewhere where it's virtually impossible to take a train, or it is impossible, of course, if you're going to the States from the Netherlands, I'm not asking them to go there like Greta Thunberg in a sailing there or something. Of course, I understand.
It'd be cool. It'd be cool.
Yeah, it would be cool if they would do that, like hook up with a lot of students and go with 20 students on a boat. But that's maybe that's for next episode.
Yeah, that's for future hopes and dreams. And I wonder about this line because I'm up in Oslo in Norway, and it's more difficult than you'd think because you have to take a bus to Copenhagen, and that's easy. And then you have to take another bus to the northern part of Germany. But you usually have, time in between. So it really becomes the first leg of your journey, so to speak, is a whole day. So drawing the line of, well, where is easy and where is not?
Yeah, exactly. So, and for us in the Netherlands, we have quite a good train network. So from most bigger cities, you can easily take a train to a place where the international trains leave. And heading south is still much easier than heading east, because that is still quite a difficult journey.
Sure.
Or a long journey. It's a long trip. So,
right. Well, let's talk about the journey itself. So where did you and your colleagues all start out? Did you start out in different places in the Netherlands?
Well, of course, we all live in different cities. So I decided when I booked the train tickets, I said to everyone, I'm going to book the train tickets from Rotterdam to Barcelona. And how you get to Rotterdam
is up to you.
They all went by train, but one came from The Hague, the other from Leiden, another one from Amsterdam. So, but to make it easier on myself and the travel agency, I said, okay, we're just going to do Rotterdam. So we all met up in Rotterdam. Most of us were there like half an hour before the train left, had a coffee together, and then we went to the platform to look for the train. And because I booked us all together, we were also close together in the train itself. That's why I wanted to book together, because if, of course, everyone could have booked for themselves, but then one might be in the first part of the train and the other one at the end. And so I thought that this would be nicer, but it was a bit of a hassle.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, how many trains? I'm wondering how long the journey was and how many trains you ended up taking, where your stops were.
I don't know why, but we had to stop in Brussels, and there we had to change trains. That was basically getting out with all our luggage, standing on the platform. The train was also standing there. It was cleaned. It was not really clean. There was someone walking up and down the train, and then we could board the train again.
Interesting.
That was weird. So I don't know. But normally, you only have to change trains in Paris. So it's one straight train to Paris. The only thing in Paris is that you have to switch train stations, because you arrive at Gare du Nord and you have to leave from Gare de Lyon. So you have to take a metro there. But the metro is right where the train station is. So you just go to the metro with your luggage, and it's super easy. And you can even buy the metro tickets on the train already. So you don't have to buy the tickets at the train station. And then you go straight from Paris to Barcelona. And the funny bit is that the bit from Paris to Barcelona is much longer distance-wise than the first bit. But time-wise, it's more or less the same.
Is it a different type of train that you take and it's faster?
It's much faster. And it's also, I think, because the Netherlands and Belgium are, you go through a lot of cities, so they're not allowed to go as fast. So I think there you go up to a maximum of 200, I would say, if you even get to that. And then after that, if you're in France, you get up to speeds of 300 kilometers an hour. So
because you're going through more countryside then rather than cities.
Yes, which is beautiful.
Yeah,
because you just get to look out the windows and see all these French villages and abandoned buildings. And at the south of France, you come along the Camargue, which is a nature reserve, and we even saw loads of flamencos. And I was told that sometimes when you're lucky, you'll see wild horses as well. So we didn't see wild horses, but we did see, I think, at least 100 flamingos. So
maybe next time.
Very interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about, that you were all kind of close together. What was it like traveling with your colleagues?
It was actually very nice because, of course, we get to talk to each other in our work, but that's always work related. And now it was a combination because, well, the good thing of course, about traveling with a train is, well, you have Wi-Fi, you can just work, but we also got to do stuff together, like talk about random things, more personal things as well, but also preparing stuff for the conference we could do on a train.
So it sounds like it was productive in two senses, kind of some of the, getting some of those deliverables done, but also some more, like colleague camaraderie sort of building.
Yeah. I think it was very good to, to get to know your colleagues in a different way. Mm-hmm. It was really nice, and some of them I already knew a bit more about, but some of them I didn't know that well, and
and so it was. What was the length of time then between the Netherlands and Paris, and then Paris and then Barcelona?
So from Rotterdam to Barcelona in total was, I have to say correctly, 11 hours.
Okay.
So, and it was about, I would say 6, so approximately 6 hours to Paris, and 5 to Paris, 6 to Barcelona. But
so were you able to leave and arrive the same day?
Yeah. So we went in the morning, and I think it was about 10:30 or something, and so we arrived in the evening. And you can eat something on the train, and we said, oh, let's all bring some things, and so we could have a sort of train picnic.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
That's very fun. Kind of like a little bit of a potluck.
I was like, like a potluck, and I had brownies, so everyone passed the brownies, and then
amazing!
It was
great
fun.
Choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, so it's actually quite good, because by plane, well, especially now in the Netherlands, it's quite a mess at the biggest airport we have. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you even have to wait 4 hours in line before you board. Well, not even board, get to the back of the, how do you say that? Like beyond the border thing.
Yeah, security check.
So the security check. So
wow.
Yeah, that's if you're unlucky, but well, you have at least 2 to 3 hours, and all the stress you have, because some of them almost missed their flight, the ones who were flying. So you don't have all that, and maybe it does take a couple of hours longer, but at least it was a relaxing couple of hours.
Certainly. That's how I feel taking some of the train rides I decide to take to other places as well. It's only an hour plane ride, but you have to get there early, and then you have to go, there's other factors, and it is stressful.
And depending on what you want to take, depending on what you want to take, you have all this hassle with liquids and stuff. You don't have that in a train. You just take your luggage. You can take as much as you want. Well, I think it's 2 pieces, but the weight doesn't really matter as long as you can handle it yourself. So you don't need any help from the train people.
You can bring as many souvenirs back as you want.
Exactly. So that's a plus side, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I only brought a small one anyways, but if you want, you can.
Being in Norway, you always want to bring back a little bit of alcohol.
Exactly, because it's so expensive.
So, and there's many wonderful things to try in other places that you want to bring back.
Yes.
So this was your second time traveling over this long distance, your first time with colleagues. It sounds like, based on what you're saying, you're going to want to do it again. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, yeah.
So definitely.
What would you do differently, or will you do differently?
It takes some preparation, and the main hurdle I had take was the travel agency, basically.
Mm.
When I asked them if they could provide me with times and prices for these certain dates for so many people, the first answer I got back was, is there a reason you want to travel by train? Because you can also take a plane. These are some of the flights.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a bit taken aback.
Yeah, they were really pushing you in that direction. I see. Interesting.
Interesting. If I ask you to look for trains, then yes, I thought that there's a reason why I want to take a train. And of course, I'm aware that there's planes. But so that was a bit odd. So there's something we still have to talk about with the travel agency of our institution. So I would start earlier.
When did you start?
I start, let's see.
If you remember.
Yeah, I think July. And then of course you have holidays in between. So
yeah. So the conference was in mid-September. So you started planning about 2 months, but there were kind of holdups.
Yeah, I think we already started planning a bit before that, but and I also want to see if we have to book through our travel agency or if we also have a specific travel agency in Leiden. So if I could go there.
So that might be kind of
someone else.
Yeah, that sounds kind of like an institutional component where your university works with the agency. And
yeah,
so
so I think it would be wise to do it via that travel agency, because we also want them to get more accustomed to this. And I also understand from the travel agency side of point that it's way more difficult to book trains than it is to book a plane, because a plane or even multiple planes you can book with one click. But trains, you have to go to all these different countries and all these different providers, or I don't know how you call that with trains. It's probably not a provider, but so it's very difficult, because then you book the first leg and then you want to book the second part. So you can't book Rotterdam to Barcelona in one go. You have to book Rotterdam, Paris, and then you have to book Paris, Barcelona. But then you book the first bit and then the second bit is already gone, or the other way around. And yeah, so that is something that should be it should really be improved on a European level, at least. But,
sure. It's interesting how these national systems, I mean, it sounds like France, Belgium, and the Netherlands have those closer connections. Well, maybe, but I guess you had to get out of Brussels, so maybe not.
At least you have a straight train to Paris. That is, so you don't have all that hassle. But then once you have to change trains, it doesn't matter where, then it becomes a hassle.
Sure. So that's good for people to know and to be aware of, is some of those hurdles, but it's still worth it in the end.
It's definitely worth it. No, and it's also what I always try to say to people, like, think of the positive sides, like the relaxed bit that you can just sit there, you can go and get a coffee whenever you want and not when the trolley comes along. So yeah, you have beautiful views.
Yeah, much prettier. Well, I mean, you can get some good views out of a plane, but they're
usually it's like the taking off and the landing is nice, and then when you're really lucky, you could get some views in between. But yeah, most of the time you're looking at the top of the clouds, right? So
yeah, and if you're like me, you're just feeling anxious because you're in an Airbus, like, oh. But what do you have any advice for people who want to also convince their colleagues to do the traveling as well? They're on board, but they just want to get, their office or their institution more on board with this.
Well, most of the times, most institutions do have like a policy in which they say we want to be climate neutral by 20XX. And this is a great way to attribute to that. Like, okay, it might only be one flight, but if everyone does it, it's multiple flights, it's thousands of flights. Write articles for newsletters saying that you would like to do this. If you did do it, write articles for newsletters again, saying that you did it and what was so nice about it, but also be honest about the small hurdles you had. Hopefully they're small. Mm-hmm. And really focus on the positive sides of train traveling. See it as part of your trip and not as a necessity to get to a certain point, because I think that's what happens now, even with people going on holidays. For a lot of people, their holidays don't start until they're actually at their destination. But I think it should already start when you lock your front door, and then that's where the fun starts. And I think it could be the same for work. Going on a conference is, most of the time, nice and exciting. So let it start when you close your front door.
Yeah, absolutely. You're able to do the work on the train. Why not?
Yeah.
Or talk to your colleagues and so.
Yeah, and maybe if you need to convince bosses, for example, those 2 days that I was on the train, I could actually work. So I actually had quite a lot of work done.
Great.
If you're going by plane, you basically lose 2 days. You can work a bit, but standing in line, maybe you can answer some emails on your telephone, but you're not going to be able to sit behind a laptop in the plane. Sometimes you can, but most of the time you don't have Wi-Fi or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Especially if it's a short flight on a smaller plane. You're not going to have as much time where you can have your laptop out, because you go up, you're out there for 30 minutes, you go back down.
And then you already have to put it away. You can't even work offline or anything. So I think really focus on the positive sides. And I was at one of the CANIE meetings, and someone said, which was really nice, I should have written it down. I can afford the monetary costs for this trip, but I cannot afford the cost for the environment if I'm taking a plane. So I think that's quite nice, a nice way of putting it. Like, okay, even if you compensate, it doesn't do justice to what we're doing to the climate. If you're flying for shorter or
it's like you have two accounts that you have to think about. There's the savings account in terms of money, the financial savings account, and then there's your carbon emissions account.
Someone even said, like, what if we, like, you have a bank account, at a certain point your money runs out. What if we would also have a carbon footprint account, and you can only have an X amount of kilograms per year? And then once you've used that up, be it by train or by plane or car or whatever, you are not allowed to travel anymore, which is an interesting thing. But
interesting.
I'm afraid it's going to work out like we see in Europe, that there's just people trading stuff like, well, I'm not using mine, so you can have my bit.
And not have quite the same impact that it needs to have. Sure.
No, but I the idea is interesting to me.
It is. It's something to think about. Well, to wrap us up, I'm wondering, are there any resources that you would recommend for people to get more informed about sustainable travel choices?
I know that the University of Utrecht, it's one of our I would say colleagues, colleague universities in the Netherlands, has a really nice website on green travel. If you just look for green travel University Utrecht, you will probably find it. And it's also something I would really like to have at our university. So I'm gonna nick some of their ideas. And I know that the German railroad company, so Deutsche Bahn, has a website where it's much easier to see if there's certain trains going and when. I know it's much easier than the Dutch one, for example, because at the Dutch website, you can't find anything. And then if you go to baan.de, then it's much easier to look those things up. And do ask your travel agency, because they should be able to book this and look for you. That's the job. That's what they get paid for.
And if they don't have those resources or that capability readily available, the more we ask, the more likely they are to start looking at that.
It's also a question of creating demand for that, because they're used to demand for planes, and now we should have demand for trains.
Absolutely. Well, Mariëlle, thank you so much for this conversation. It has been wonderful to talk to you and hear about your journeys on traveling by train.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. And it was a really nice interview.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the CANIE Climate Dialogues. If you want to get involved with Travel with CANIE, check out the LinkedIn group, Travel with CANIE, all capital letters, where people traveling sustainably are sharing their itineraries and connecting with colleagues also making the choice to lower their travel emissions. You can find a link to the group in the show notes. 2 quick, easy climate actions you can take today are to subscribe to and rate our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Feel free to leave a comment and let us know what you think. We'd also like to remind our listeners that CANIE is a volunteer-run and led organization. If you have felt inspired by this episode today, please consider heading to our website, canie.org, and making a donation to help our operations and growth.